And now, almost 15 years and one semi-successful channel later, I was present at the release of Civilization 7, but was not one of the creators selected to review this game. This was devastating, as I of course assumed the creators given the review copy would have the chance to play hundreds of hours, uncover everything there was to know about the game. But to my surprise, the creators were struggling. And so I knew what I had to do. Everything in my life was given the backseat, as I was about to do something my 8-year-old self wouldn't dream of. To climb this mountain of adversity and become the best Civilization 7 player in the world by being the first to achieve every Legacy Path Golden Age on Deity difficulty, before finally capping off this challenge with a last exploit that even the developers understand as being impossible. But being a new game, there will be broken strategies, and so for the sake of fairness, I will not be partaking in these exploits. With my paying extra to get this game a week early and some future responsibilities, I have until February 11th to conquer the challenge that lay before me, and so the clock started ticking. And if I fail, I will never get another chance. I couldn't help but smile, as for the first game, I had a plan. You see, I'd spent the last 24 hours absorbing every Civ 7 video I could get my hands on, and after carefully parsing through different strategies and tactics, I soon determined that the most crucial resource in this game was the settlement cap. And if I can abuse that cap, I can overpower the deity advantages through sheer numbers, which made my choice of leader crystal clear. Xerxes, the king of kings leading Persia. But the thing is, settlement cap is no good if I don't know where to settle, which is where my two key mementos to speedrun this strategy enter the scene. Both mementos powered my early game, as the first allowed settlers to uncover an enormous portion of the map, revealing both settleable land and game-changing tribal villages, from which I always prioritize the gold option, since we'll need a lot more than the 200 from Lydian Lion. But when there's no gold, my consolation prize is science to unlock technologies faster, which begs the question, what exactly is my tech path? That beats me. I mean, animal husbandry for slingers, I guess. In the meantime, I begin recruitment of warriors, the backbone of my army who will accomplish the first step of my ingenious plan. And soon after, my combined forces were ordered to move to the front, when I was alerted that my capital had just eclipsed 5 population, which made it eligible to start the critical process of producing settlers, which is where my stockpiled gold reserves came in like a right hook. Buying settlers allows me to spend production enriching my capital, whilst quickly reaching the settlement cap. The only advantage I have on deity, where the other leaders, like Frederick and Amina, are given insurmountable advantages to all yields, which did influence my choice of not giving them another, electing to instead save my influence. That hoarding also extends to city-states, as instead of paying almost 500 to annex their lands, I remembered that this was the age of antiquity, and ethnically cleansing them is a valid option. But a snag quickly hit my plans when the advancing army was unexpectedly cut off, forced to hastily deploy battle formations to match the superior champion foe. To make matters worse, this task force will be without a commander for the time being, which turns out to be unnecessary when my forces exploit a break in the lines, to first surround and then rout the first line of defense before flanking the remaining enemy. And by the time my general was ready for duty, Champa now lay a burning ruin. A necessary sacrifice, as the now freed up land was used to settle our 4th settlement of Sparta in the quickest possible time. But now it was time for the hard part. We had to develop all this land for our future goals. And while I was raking in more than enough dough, I was jolted awake when I realized how far behind the AI we were. Although we can use their technological superiority for our own benefit, chiefly by tasking my trader to reach closer to our 20 needed resources, while planning to soon conquer the rest, as all eyes now focus on Xerxes' second ability. The 3 combat strength, when combined with Persia's, means our armies are the most dangerous, disciplined, fighting force in the ancient world. and I have a plan to use that unmatched firepower to bring all 4 legacy paths to heal. The first step involves using Persia's increased production to the Wonder, Gate of All Nations, which grants 2 free combat strength in all wars. But even with that advantage, a surprise war gives the defender 3 combat strength, which is why I need to infuriate Frederick to declare a formal war instead, progressing in that task by engaging in the most dangerous gambit you can on Deity. But this risk is inconsequential when we have the Immortal, our unique unit who can heal after eliminating an enemy, an ability our 3 armies build around as I set out to conquer all 4 legacy paths. Here's how. For culture, I need to house 7 wonders, and Frederick has more than enough already to complete that daunting task. And by conquering those wanderlusted cities, they will count as 2 points instead of 1 for the militaristic path, meaning 3 cities is all I require. 3 cities that push us over the 20 resources we need for the economic golden age, leaving just the science path. Now, this is the one I'm least confident in because I'm unsure if great works are conquerable like in Civ 6, but I mean, even if not, I'm sure I can forgive enough chemistry-licensed war criminals to get those 10 great works as my war preparations near completion. And after deploying my forces, I was ready, declaring war at the most opportune time for an immediate 5 war support right before I blundered, not keeping my units and generals greatly limited maneuverability, making surrounding the enemy capital barely doable, as I soon ordered my forces forward, launching themselves at Roma's unprepared defenses. And it was then when I realized that the AI had an extra 8 combat strength on Deity. This was bad, completely countering all my preparations up to this point, as I had to stomach severe casualties just to make any progress. But eventually I would emerge triumphant in this struggle, putting myself firmly in the driver's seat. This powerful city led to a massive influx in resources that will require more cities just to place, since I only have 1 at this point, which is the likely reason for my trickle of science and culture. A disadvantage made up for with Frederick's focus being spread across multiple fronts, as I had 2 allies to his 1. This localized advantage allowed us to punch through Neapolis's defenses without too much of a fight, securing my 2nd of 3 cities. But I wasn't about to gamble my master plan on one risky all-out assault, instead electing to overwhelm the enemy by launching simultaneous attacks on Mediolanum, Batavium, Pompeii, and Aquileia. The most difficult of those fortresses was Batavium, with a massive mountain towering over its eastern flank, forcing me to roll the dice and send our vulnerable archers to break the stalemate. And while they crossed the Alps, my hastily recruited marines crossed the river into Mediolanum, and after making some gains are pinned down and at risk of total annihilation, forcing me to further stretch my armies by diverting forces to relieve their positions, unknowingly launching this relief force against the stout wall of the Roman Tortoise. While the battle was raging, I got word that we had just suffered a devastating defeat in the north. With our immortals scattered and front line open, the order was given for an immediate retreat from Mediolanum, with the only success in this time being our conquest of the undefended Pompeii. And before we shamefully issued the order for a general retreat from the Roman heartland, we're thrown a bone. Isabella sues for peace, and with our commanding 3-1 lead, we quickly seek to restore relations before our paper tiger of an army is exposed, negotiating control of Mediolanum in the process. While this may count as a technical success, it was only barely, as our nation's underdevelopment, chiefly due to our lone city, was evidence I could have done better. We quickly moved to rectify this embarrassment, inching us ever closer to the sweet allure of an economic golden age. The military pathway was already complete, but no culture or science? No. I know we control more wonders after taking them from Rome. But as I was scouring the Civilopedia and various YouTube videos, I soon realized that the dogshit UI has screwed me out of a win. Apparently it isn't wonders controlled like the game proudly displays, it's wonders built. This crushed my will to go on, as all my hard work had been for naught. I only kept going after I realized I could plug in enough resources for the economic golden age, and with science being a distinct possibility, I was determined to soldier on to obtain the three-peat. But my job was about to be made a lot harder when the start of the fall of my empire that will lead to the cycle beginning. What do you mean we're only losing 10 gold? I can work with that, as the spirits are further raised after escaping the cultural dark age with the Oracle. This boost in culture granted us literacy and another codex, leaving us with 20% of the age to secure the science golden age. And my science numbers were dramatically shooting up due to the new libraries in all my cities. The only issue I was facing was the crisis, but the complications were more annoyances than our empire falling apart. Ignoring that part of the game entirely, as my focus lies solely on the key technology, mathematics. It was now time to spam the academy to research the mathematics mastery as quickly as I could and secure its 2 free codices. And just as it was looking like I was about to three-peat, my hopes were once again extinguished. This time I am certain this is unintentional, because I research the codices and don't get them. I try to restart the game, reload a save, lust over Catherine, but slowly the realization dawns on me that nothing would overrule the end result. Entering the next golden age lacking in culture and science due to factors outside of my control. But even then, this plan was not entirely unsuccessful. I knew coming into this game that first timing this challenge was a tall order. Instead, I needed to stay focused and separate the failures from the different strategies I employed. And finally, I can't deny that there is one choice above all that fueled my desire to completely restart this game. Xerxes sucks. If he's the King of Kings and I'm a Grand Master, his combat strength doesn't come close to making up Deity's enormous stimulus. I need a better leader, a more reliable one that can give me the science and culture bonuses I so thoroughly lacked in this past game. And that was when I remembered that there was one leader who met that description. I was good, maybe even great, but it still wasn't enough. So what am I missing? I needed more leeway to find out, and so this game was played on a mortal to test Greece's influence bonuses for both allies and vassals. For now, I remove the one mechanic in this game that is a complete dud, and start the game not only armed with a different setup, but also a new plan. With the Tundra bias, we can focus on securing and developing both coasts of our little fiefdom away from the main action in the center, which is proving to be a success as the only civ in my vicinity was Amina. But as I was forcibly displacing the city-state in possession of Russian territory, I met him. The devil incarnate and the biggest roadblock this challenge would ever face. But focusing on our more pressing concern, the Slinger support was more than enough to eliminate the camp, securing the south and soon after the north, as my prostrating has done wonders for Amina's relations. It was now time to go full steam ahead on infrastructure, as Catherine had what might amount to the best ability in the game. A quarter of our culture is added to science, giving me respectable numbers in both categories, with the potential for so much more. But as I was clearing out a second camp, I realized that I had no money to buy a settler, which was troubling, because our protected start was already dealt a blow to our militaristic age objectives, as we needed to replace conquering 6 settlements with settling 12, which would require copious amounts of gold. And that is where one of the best wonders in the game comes in. Now every wonder built will give me 200 gold, allowing me to quickly settle my borders, as well as incentivize me to build the 7 wonders I so desired. But not all was going well, as we don't even share the same continent. But that would pale in comparison to what happened next. Firaxis, I'm on my knees, bring loyalty. This promising game was now looking like another restart, but for now I decided to trudge on, mainly because there is a glimmer of hope from something I've neglected to mention before now. The attribute system that contains some of the most powerful bonuses in this game. This alone allowed us to be more competitive, which naturally extended to our defense. As this short, Corsican fuck, whose gold digger wife's disgust with him nearly matched mine, has agreed to seek terms. And so with 50% of the age to go, we can now focus on our build. Where did you even come from? Our only saving grace was that the AI made the brilliant strategic move of scattering his forces to be eliminated piecemeal. Yeah, it might surprise you to hear that his army's disintegration only made up about 1/2 of the 2 factors that forced him to the negotiating table, the second of which being our enormous yields, as it seems that 3 cities is the magic number. And because of Catherine's second ability, I was now in a position to break this game wide open. With no more influence influence required to keep up war support, I can now explain how endeavors work. All leaders have two, depending on what their focus is, but Catherine is the only leader to have in her possession the two best endeavors in the entire game. And with that, I was able to speed down the tech trees for the science legacy, make use of the trader mechanic to accomplish the economic one, and settle my 9th city to reach the 2nd milestone in the militaristic pathway. And with my monstrous yields unlocking multiple future techs and civics, the second part of my plan could now commence. Every time you research these techs, you obtain 1 wildcard point, which I put down the culture and science trees for even more of the yields that eluded me last run, which led to this game being nothing short of perfection, despite the 2 wars sapping my resources. But despite temporary success, this was far from the last time Josephine's sugarless daddy would screw me over. But that is in the future, as the current age of exploration has dawned upon us, with 2 of the 4 legacy paths requiring colonialism of some kind, so the choice of Civ is obvious. Although I still wasn't at my best this game, as I forgot to change mementos, but 400 golds and super scouts I won't build aren't the worst things to have. In fact, mementos don't really matter at all, because in the age of exploration, there's always a set path that maximizes optimization. Fealty settlement limit needs no explanation, and of course the more science and culture attribute points the better, but the Golden Age legacy is different. You can only choose one, even if you obtain multiple Golden Ages, and the best choice is by far the economic one to keep your cities as cities. Of course, my Civ 6 monkey brain went, science? And fumbled harder than I would with Catherine. Thankfully, Lydian Lion limited the damage enough to begin focusing on our plan for this age. Piety for a rapid religion, and cartography to get as much ethnic cleansing out of my system as I could before the modern age. You see, the age of exploration has 4 legacy pathways. Relics are gained depending on your founder belief, and from the civic tree. Militaristic resembles the age of antiquity, but you have to settle distant lands, the economic pathway, which involves working and bringing home treasure fleets to obtain 30 points, which is 10 less than what the science pathway requires. 40 yields on 5 tiles outside your city centers. All that's left is to re-establish our alliance with Amina, and off we go. We can work on the militaristic path from turn 1 as my cogs launch an expedition to the Spice Islands for new natives to exploit. But our lust for illicit goods was matched by the first foreign leader, Isabella. Thankfully, she can't actually settle this distant land until cartography, which unlocks the same turn as piety. And after our first round of religion-founding temples get placed, I moved my settlers and military to begin colonizing the Spice Islands through settlements and sheer force of arms. Although focusing our armies in the New World had the drawback of a now porous frontier that India was all too willing to exploit. It's too bad my new ally Napoleon was about to open a second front. After realizing that my distraction at this second round slugfest caused a cog's crew to die cold and alone, I quickly liven up the room with a religion, gaining 2 relics for converting cities with wonders. And before other religions spawned to make things difficult, I quickly send missionaries all across the continent to secure as many relics as I can. This ecstasy at our newfound beliefs causes a celebration as theocracy works twofold for Catherine, vaulting us far ahead of the other competitors. And that lead in mainly culture, when combined with the lightning-fast religion, gave me 8 relics, a guaranteed cultural golden age when we unlock the rest from the civic tree, allowing us to now shift focus, raise our sails, and charge full steam ahead to the scramble for the new world, symbolized by my first colony of Barcelona. While I could have settled this city ages ago, it really doesn't matter since I need shipbuilding to spawn treasure fleets, but thanks to our massive science numbers, that moment is fast approaching. This technological edge simultaneously kept the Indians at bay, as it was obvious my army was winning this battle for supremacy. This failure on both his fronts forced India to relinquish his newest city, further bolstering my growing empire. And that wasn't the end of war, as colonial forces jumped on the science city-state and established a beachhead, while my navy discovered Spain's home continent, and soon enough, the last civilization this game had to offer. A discovery that could be made faster now that shipbuilding meant that treasure fleets would now be spawning, meaning this quadfecta was as good as mine. But after settling my 3rd colony, I asked the question, where are my treasure fleets? And that surprise was only matched by the shock I felt when the Civilopedia actually proved useful. I needed fishing Ks to spawn the treasure. While the mistake was quickly corrected, we already lost valuable time. Would there still be enough to get the 30 points we so desperately need? I couldn't risk it, and so settled the second continent for more treasure fleets at the cost of my would-be ally, Isabella. But being this close to other leaders had its drawbacks, namely that every time I'd convert these cities for double the points, Isabella would convert them right back, leading me to soon concoct a plan that would turn the tables for good. For now, I thought I would go and perform what I thought was a masterful gambit, but would soon turn out to be the worst mistake of this run. This would soon derail the entire game, but could I save it? Yeah, with my yields probably. But the yields are lower than last time, and that was because of the settlement limit since I forgot to build Spain's wonder El Escorial. At least I didn't have to worry about treasure fleet resources, as they were now coming in, putting me well on the path to winning 3 of the victory types. But as I would now begin to focus on the 4th, the inevitable happened. When the Mongolian leader Xerxes decided it was about time to oust the colonizers. This was bad. Xerxes launched a 2-pronged offensive on both frontier cities as I was left scrambling just to gather the funds for a night in the north. Thankfully, the Navy was stationed in the New World, giving us the shore bombardment against Mongolia's cavalry forces. And with that local superiority, we were able to use concentrated fire to repel the first wave of his offensive. And in our newfound breathing room, a knight was dispatched with the task of fortifying the gates to Sevilla, even if it cost him his life. And with such a dire situation, it may surprise you that I found the time to settle Bilbao as well as Cordoba. But one look at our yields and you can easily see that he can't guard me. But my arrogance would soon cause the biggest mistake of this run. With my focus laying on the success of the war front, back home was given the back seat as I unknowingly completed 2 last-second golden ages that I could have held off on, as I was 1 tile, 1 growth away from total victory. If only I hadn't placed those earlier specialists in the city center, I would have swept the Age of Exploration. But even still, this performance put me well in front for the modern age. And unlike last time, I changed my mementos, going for a free science and culture point to further exasperate my advantage before choosing the only obvious civ. But this is when I realized something. I was going against the spirit of the challenge. Catherine is way too broken. 25% culture to science is busted. And while I could win, I just had this question gnawing at my subconscious. Was this game a fluke? Was I getting carried in between Catherine's giant milk? I wanted to make sure I could handle the other ages with other leaders instead of relying on what I perceive to be one of the best leaders in the game. But even still, that doesn't take away from the fact that my display this game was breathtaking, finally breaking through the barrier that was my room temperature IQ. And like that fabled chess match, I was obliterating the lower difficulties. But just like back then, it was now time to face the gauntlet. But this time I was confident in my ability to beat Deity. And so here we are. I needed someone not weak necessarily, but also not broken to truly test if I was ready to tackle this challenge on Deity. And with my mementos chosen, I scroll through the choices and decide that the Rizzler interests me. And from his 2 strategic choices, I could not believe the Mississippians' flaming archers and wanted to put them to the test, giving me more than just a good feeling about this game. Quickly settling Cahokia, which despite its limited resources nearby, I was determined to make work by changing up the plan. Generals are always too late to make use of in my daily city-state Goonacide, so I instead opt for culture from tribal villages, since gold buying settlers alone isn't a winning strategy. In the north lies Himiko and Napoleon, my sworn enemy. Despite my biggest op on my doorstep, I party hard, daring him to do something. With oligarchy charging our growth and the second city settled quickly, I was surprised when my general arrived far too soon, as I only had 1 warrior available in this godlike start, literally suffering from success. But I'm glad that I did, since it was our neighbor to the south, Catherine, that occupied what looked to be Mississippian territory. Remembering what happened in my first game, I quickly take out their soon-to-be vassal Yamatai, using our flaming archers to get the science bonus towards the all-important bronze working. The final civilization that shared this continent was Charlemagne, an ally of the insecure Napoleon who couldn't stand my success. To secure some sort of alliance, I part ways with influence to begin seducing Laventa while ordering a mobilization with the disciplined mastery. But not just for the Gate of All Nations. You see, I had a theory that might solve all of my problems. And right as I managed to denounce the Russian queen, I took solace in the fact that I would not be alone in this war, as Laventa soon bowed down to the might of the Rizzler, sending a free codex as tribute. But with only one city, this might wasn't all-encompassing, and I was struggling to get the wonders out, which meant that I had not enough Stell gold to begin my conversion of towns into cities, at least until I finally secured the Gate of All Nations right as I was prepared to declare— What? Catherine somehow still doesn't hate me, and all my efforts for war support will be null and void if I have to face 2 more combat strength boosting the deity's massive bonus, so I'm forced to spend more influence to make her dislike me faster. Influence I could have used to get even more war support, no matter, as this setback doesn't change the fact that my pathways are still looking good, and will look even better when we take the heart of Catherine's empire, as when she finally despised me, it was time to begin the war, immediately sending troops to surround her undefended city as her forces were too busy dealing with a Napoleonic incursion, which might have been our saving grace, as what few forces she did have were causing irreparable damage to my armies, forcing me to divert troops to hold off not just the archer, but also her main army that was surely on its way. And so the First Army had to accomplish this enormous task. But thankfully, through desperation comes innovation, as I finally used the Great General's focus fire ability to increase damage to the hoplite. But this wasn't flawless, as my forces are taking heavy casualties from the still effective Russian army. And so, with nothing more than a weakened swordsman, can I force the city to bend the knee? Yes! This decisive victory was all thanks to the incredible strength of the Flaming Archers, taking an already strong unit and giving them damage over time, making them almost as broken as the terrain which Catherine uses to force me through a choke point. But I've gotten wiser in all my games, and knowing that risking my newly acquired gains for more land wasn't wise, decided to seek peace with their capital, now a core part of the Mississippian Empire. Overall, we are progressing rapidly, obtaining the first in every age objective with 2/3 of the age remaining, as I even have the yield advantage. Napoleon? And to make this crisis worse than any Firaxis could come up with, Napoleon has denounced us, as we were forced to match the Titan with no influence, no allies, and no bitches. A grim state indeed. At least my newly acquired commendation allows me to make up some of the deity bonuses, giving me time to quickly research bronze working while the flaming arrows hold the line. Thankfully, after the upgrade, our defenses become stalwart. And through our incredible unique unit, Napoleon once again sees the writing on the wall. But instead of making peace with Charlemagne, I realize that I have nowhere else to settle, and still 2 more militaristic objectives to go. Something that would no doubt be improved once we take the resource-rich Batavium. They sent the only legion in the area to resist, but were woefully outmatched as the city was soon surrounded. With its capture only a matter of time, I'm not satiated just yet, and thankfully, still had the opportunity to extend further with Himiko joining the fight. Now Charlemagne was looking desperate, trying whatever to end this war. Eventually we arrived at Ravenna later than we anticipated and supported Himiko's efforts. But the Romans' counterattack was fierce, with units behind strong walls that would rather die than risk their women under the Rizzler's seductive smile. Thankfully, I've realized that, unlike Civ 6, the ballista is essential, securing the city of Ravenna before making peace with the bitch in the north. But not all was going well, as just 20% of the age remained. Nowhere near enough time to research and build 2 wonders, so we instead focused on obtaining the remaining 5 codices. And unlike last game, I would not push the age ahead until we finished the rest of the tech tree. A task that was nothing compared to the entire weight of the Rizzler's celebrations, giving us more social policies and thus more than enough science to get the last codex, ending the age without much fanfare, but with the spread that would have seemed impossible only a short while ago. And with just a few more wonders incorporated into our plan, we would have been able to perfect the Age of Antiquity. And this realization allowed me to look forward to the relatively easy age of exploration before we finally reach the modern era, the most difficult of all due to that final challenge I mentioned at the start. I make sure to change my mementos for 2 extra settlements and a boost to my specialists to get to 40 yields quicker, but the 2 extra settlement limit isn't without a drawback, one that was rectified with the Silk Road Golden Age, and without any need for recidifying, the opening was bog standard. Because I took many of the wonders last stage, the same belief would be insufficient, so I go for the one that gives 1 relic if the city has 10 urban population. And as for my journey to native exploitation, it led me to my new brethren, who, while strong, couldn't hope to match the strength of Napoleon. Nevertheless, we did obtain 6 quick relics, settlers to the new world-worn route, and we've all but secured 3 of the 4 legacy paths. And just like last time, all I needed now was science. And also just like last time, a foreign civilization saw my forces in the new world and smelled opportunity. Napoleon declared a second war, dragging along Charlemagne, but with my yields and money, we'd be fine, right? As the Northern Front was the first to brace for impact from Charlemagne, who sought his revenge, communicating effectively with his ally, who simultaneously launched 2 invasions to Athens as well as Crete. But both defenses fared much better thanks to their entrenchment. Still though, the situation wasn't exactly tenable. With no allies, the full might of the broken Normans and Abbasids fell upon me. And thanks to my lacking science numbers compared to this, we kept getting forced further and further back. While this defense effort against an insurmountable enemy was commendable, I needed to do something or my lines would break entirely with their backs behind this navigable river. With this decisive advantage, my city of Crete was barely holding on. All Napoleon had to do was kill the garrison, and with wave after wave entering our sovereign territory, they might manage to do just that. But my admiration was soon replaced with a sense of impending doom. My ships now lay at the bottom of the riverbed, along with any chance I had of holding the line. This was over. No one wanted to make peace, and all my yields and gold lay like my once powerful armies, devastated at the feet of the miniature Julius wannabe, who gets no bitches. And in true civilization fashion, the AI ran away with this game. How can I hope to stop them when they gain such a massive advantage early on? I mean, forget about getting all the legacy paths. How do I get a single deity win? What if this runaway AI happens again?
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
With just 3 days left until the end of this challenge, things were looking dire. I needed to recalculate my strategy, and so I spent the next day, not with another game of Civilization 7, but in the lab, absorbing every ounce of Civilization content I could find, discovering a multitude of advantages and tricks that may just save this run, or fall flat on arrival. So after spending a whole day off camera, training and absorbing content, I think I finally have a shot. But with just 2 days left, I would have to play a perfect game, including the modern age I still haven't gotten around to learning yet. This was my final gambit. And this perfect strategy relies on a leader that is in fact not that good, at least from first impressions. But despite that, I think that the particular set of skills possessed by Ibn Battuta are perfect for this run. But maybe not for deity. The only way I could be ready for that is if I could dominate this game and prove that my training arc was more than just a day off. And now it's time to implement all the little things I learned for a massive advantage, quickly sending out 3 scouts to secure tribal villages with picture-perfect movement, obtaining the only yields that matter. Through their incredible sight from the memento, we also were the first to meet multiple leaders, securing positive relations in exchange for their culture and scientific endeavors, as my special endeavor is pretty bad. At least for right now. After the culture stacks enough to unlock an early chiefdom, I secure the 2 free wildcards thanks to Batuda's ability. But this plan requires me not to go down the science or culture and instead focus on domination to clear out city-states and increase my boost from the Gate of All Nations. With my new knowledge of which technologies are appropriate for which situation, I was able to analyze my starting areas before maximizing my nation's productive value to pump out 2 quick settlers, before training my army right as the general was incoming. But I didn't go discipline first, as I was going to prioritize a certain pantheon which was unfortunately taken due to this dogfight of a difficulty, so at least that's one final surprise for the next game. For now, I'm content with showing my newfound settler skills, taking up as many resources as possible to secure the economic pathway. However, unlike the previous game, I also had a city plan. High production towns would be cities, yes, but the early game gold from towns was massive. And so every town would grow to 7-8 population before specializing or evolving, because while all of my previous games have suffered from a lack of cities, I was also missing the truth staring right at me. Towns, like fishing villages, could grow my cities to stupendous populations, making them just as, if not more important than cities. For now, my one city was more than enough to deploy my new army and obtain massive experience from clearing out a nearby city-state. At the same time, my war footing was given a boost with the Gate of All Nations, and with my turn 1 friendliness preventing any early wars, I even had enough influence to ally with an important city-state I'd eventually annex freely while securing not just the free codex, but also an ally for any future conflict. All of these minor changes may have not won me this game, but they improved my early game position drastically. But of course, all the friendliness in the world wasn't enough to overpower human greed as Frederick declares his intent to pilfer my prized Jordans. But this is fine, as we were expecting this betrayal with my forces already set up for a pivotal defense. A defense that gave valuable experience to my commander, who'd soon use these skills to launch his very own offensive. And with all the new tricks I learned, to retreat back to a general to heal, ensuring my commander obtains every ounce, and the big war support push when faced against his city that sounds Arabic enough to me, we were in prime position to expand the empire. His willingness to give me his city revealed his hand, and combined with our commendation sealed the fate of Mediolanum, as we now wait for bronze working and gold. But with how weak cities are this early in the game, I probably didn't even need level 2 units, because soon enough the second city was captured, and then a third in the ensuing cessation of hostilities, a temporary cessation, because we still need to get both economic and military paths, a difficult challenge now that we are over the city limit, and so to aid in that effort, Sparta is now our second city, as we seek to keep up the pace with our early yields like science, to fully deck out our 3 generals against the now crippled Frederick, especially when we stack the deck in our favor for the next war, making the second war nowhere near a peer-to-peer competition, as shown when Neapolis and their army evaporated from this mortal plane, and soon even Roma bent the knee. Peace offer, I hear. Think of the women and children, you say? Of course I didn't forget about them. Who else is gonna mine the cobalt? And with that, Frederick is eliminated, securing my northern front and 2 of the 4 legacy paths. A colossal mistake. I was not ready as the age was supercharged from 53 to 65. Okay, but maybe if we just upgrade Roma, the age is already at 80? This isn't enough time, with mathematics slipping further from our clutches with every turn that passes. And soon enough, the age had come to an end, with culture and science being subpar to say the least. I had once again completely failed due to my ignorance. At this point, I was ready to give up. Again. In everything I do, every game, every hobby, I always give up, refusing to rectify my failures when I can just wipe the slate clean. Always waiting for the perfect game instead of making do with a bad situation, but has that ever really worked? I mean, did the itsy bitsy spider give up when the rain came down and washed the spider out? No, he climbed up the spout again, and while the sun did come out and dried up all the rain, it was his perseverance that was rewarded, as none of that shit would have mattered if the spider gave up and tried another spout. I will finish this game, even if it ends with me giving up my last town as the AI eliminates my civ from the history books. So after making sure to plug in my standard mementos, I was faced with a decision. Spain is theoretically good at colonizing, but what bonuses do they really have? With the reliance on the tech tree, maybe I should just focus on a science suit? And so the choice was obvious. Moving our capital to Baghdad to gain a coast and immediately prepare for our 6 settlers. However, before that, I obtained my religion and decide to venture to the Abbasids' unique civics, just to see how strong they really are. And you know, those impressive science and culture yields almost made me forget about my 2 free wildcard points that are used on the underdeveloped science tree. Soon enough, my religion guarantees a few relics and hopefully a golden age in both culture and economic as the settlers have begun making landfall. And with my meeting of the 2 civs on the foreign continent, it was now time to unleash Ibn Battuta using his unique endeavor, giving me eyes on the second continent. And while they would also gain eyes on my land, all they would see is the Abbasid specialists giving gold, which allows me to stack the paper and buy my unique districts, upgrading Mecca since it's almost Ramadan, and finally complete the Abbasid tree, but at a price. You see, the regular civic tree has been untouched, but why would I do that? Well, after plugging in the tradition compendious book, oh my goodness! I haven't seen a performance this dominant since 2018 LeBron, or more recently 2024 Hammurabi. I can't squander this opportunity and move to perfect the Age of Exploration. And with my focus on specialist, science was well on its way, using the science tree's culture buildings to begin sniping relics from the civic What's that? Not just the relics, but also the fact that I could ignore this game's dogshit religion mechanic. How do you regress from Civ 6? But that doesn't matter, as culture, science, and economic golden ages were now secured. It was time to end this age while the AI was still far behind, and that won't be too difficult considering I'm at future tech with a third of the age remaining. Every future tech granted another science attribute for even faster future techs. And with the tide finally turning, the culmination of all my plans came together. Missionaries in every foreign settlement, conversion of all my cities, obtaining the second age bonus for domination since I ran out of room for colonies. But that's a problem easily fixable next time around, because nothing could bring me down from the fact that my yields at the end of this age were better than the unrecorded Benjamin Franklin's at the end of the modern age. Speaking of which, this is by far the most important of the 3 ages, not solely because of the legacy paths, those are simple enough. It's the victory conditions that I need that turns this challenge from hard to impossible. But for now we focus on this game, and with the most difficult legacy path being domination, this was our practice for the next and final game. Same mementos and golden age that I have deemed is essential to obtain all 4 legacy paths for the very special modern age. For economic, you first need to unlock 2 buildings, the rail station which unlocks the factory, and then you're allowed to slot in these factory resources that produces economic points, of which you need 500. Science is exactly like previous entries, build 3 projects and launch the manned mission to the moon this time. But domination is where things get a little convoluted, so focus up. You need 20 points. You gain 1 from each city conquered, 2 if you have one of the 3 ideologies unlocked, and 3 if you conquer a city from an ideology other than your own. And finally, culture requires you to excavate and display 15 relics, some of which are unlocked with the first civic natural history, while the rest are unlocked from hegemony. And all of this together, while not quite as easy as the Age of Exploration, is still nothing like building 7 wonders in antiquity. It's the next part that might make this challenge truly impossible, and if I was somehow to win this game, it would truly prove I was the best in the world. In one of the pre-release patch notes, Firaxis made it so that getting golden ages for the legacy paths in the modern era don't advance the age progress as we saw in antiquity, because before it would get to 100% before anyone could win this game. You definitely see where I'm going with this. Academics is the first on the tech path to focus on science and military units that will be level 3 before the AI can get 2 thanks to my insane yields, allowing me to blitz through the tech tree at warp speed. With the ensuing schoolhouses, my lead balloons to an insurmountable lead, obtaining flight at turn 20. But I was getting worried. When would another civ choose an ideology? And as I waited, I prepared my air force and generals that have stood by me throughout the ages with the most cutting-edge units and bombers. But just when I thought that no one would challenge my hegemony by picking another ideology, Isabella declared war on me. Let's see here, +6, planes, what's that music? Actually, hold on, that'll get copyrighted. despite our dominance, the Mexicans were entrenched. It was far too difficult to root them out as we didn't know where they were. They just kept spawning in, and no matter how many soldiers I sent, more just kept pouring through. Even with our technological advantage, we couldn't hope to stop this onslaught. And while we did eliminate plenty and imprison many more, we lost a lot of our own, which is when I started thinking, I don't think Trump's gonna be able to deport everyone he says he's. Anyways, back to the game. Despite the Geneva suggestions, I didn't build these planes to follow abstract concepts like international law and human rights. That children's hospital will be bombed as I rampage across her empire. And after taking her ally Himiko's colony, I'd finally done it, making peace with Spain, but Himiko refused, just as I expected. Let him cook! The completion of the Manhattan Project unlocks Operation Ivy, which wins us a domination victory in dominant fashion. Everything clicked. All those lessons, all the little things with the scouts, the influence, the towns, the tech, all of it allowed me to not only beat Immortal like it was my father when faced with an 8-year-old, and also when he played me in chess, but to beat it in style. And most important of all was the fact that I didn't give up even when things didn't go my way. But would this newfound mental toughness be enough? After all, even this dominant game didn't have a single era with perfect scores, and we would soon be bumping up this difficulty. So the question was simple. Would this prove just a fluke? Or did I have what it takes to hold the mantle as the first ever undisputed greatest? Well, the next day was February 11th, and so I would only have one chance to find that answer. Because there's no time left aside from one more game. Win or lose, the challenge ends here. The issue with the last game, and really every game, was that I didn't exactly have a plan. Who's the best leader? What even is the plan? What happens if the AI runs away like Napoleon? Well, for this entire challenge, there was one thing, one yield that accurately predicted how a game would end up playing out. The most important resource in the game was the settlement cap. And if I can abuse that number, I can overpower the deity advantages through sheer numbers. And so my choice of leader and Civ were clear. With just one game left, I can't afford to play it safe and bet it all on red. Bueller's start is perfect, allowing for huge culture numbers and a quick mysticism for the Pantheon that missed me last time. The nearest neighbor's Jose, who we secure positive relations with to buy us time. In fact, that's the goal for every leader in the game, but to obtain the required influence for that, we need the Influence Pantheon, allowing us all the endeavors and city-state allies our heart so desires. But this early game plan left a gaping hole in our strategy. Without money, I have to hard build the settlers, but thankfully, I've nothing to build but settlers to hit my massive 5-city limit, at least until I master discipline and get started on the Gate of All Nations. But this doesn't mean a stop to my settler production, as through strategic tribal villages and money-pinching activities, I've obtained enough money to buy a 4th, while others had no more than 2. This was working, but the only way we can build all 7 wonders is if we give up something in the early game, and for us that was our military, as the consequence of that decision reveals itself when nothing but this lone slinger stands between victory and ultimate defeat. And he holds the line well against the onslaught, something witnessed by my biggest op making his return. Eventually we hire a warrior and tag team the barbarians with our new general, who's soaking up the experience, inching him ever closer to the order promotion. Eventually a second slinger gives me the numbers to push the city-state back and complete the most important wonder in the game. And the wonders don't stop there. With my well-promoted general and tactical acumen, the city-state poses as nothing more than culture for my coffers. This clearing grants us the militaristic attribute point to obtain another free war support, pushing us up to 3 without boosting it further. Towns whose gold production in conjunction with the Great Stele can be used to build up settlers to plug up the mountain range in case of foreign invasions, although the opposite also holds true. But if we can't get the 7 wonders, then it doesn't matter how many war crimes I commit, we will fail. And so thankfully we have the bandwidth to do just that, as all my early game schmoozing makes everyone love me too much to declare war on me, as the city and wonder spam continues unabated. This beneficial relationship with all these cultural leaders allows me to keep pace with deity's numbers, aside from one, Frederick. We have to get the rest of the wonders before he snipes them all, meaning we can't afford to stop after Der Shurken, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel. The Oracle, Pyramids, and Colosseum are all easy to get and would put me at 6, and with just one more needed, there's one specific wonder that not only pushes us towards this golden age, but also another. However, I have to forego that for now, as doing so would push the age ahead like in the Batuta game. Until then, the other legacy paths need some work, and with bronze working coming in, we need to get started on an army. A task our early second city will aid in. But even still, there are just too many things we need to build in too few cities, and with the increased 50% cost from the memento, it means that our cities are coming a lot slower than I would like. I need something to turn my Uluru boosted capital into a super city, and when I saw the Petra, I knew what I had to do. With Parsa now holding the crown as the city of the world's desire, we were now just one wonder away from the golden age that has eluded us for so long. For now, we have 12 settlements to take, and I do mean take, from Jose. But with his deity defenses, ballistas are a must. What do you mean they can't reinforce? Oh my god, ballistas only have one movement, forcing me to delay the war for longer than I anticipated. But this impediment may have actually been a blessing in disguise, and I did not hesitate. But this was deity, and so he still had the strength to completely obliterate my archers from behind. Even my immortals were struggling, as my commendation general couldn't be everywhere at once. Despite that brutal counterattack, we held, and our southern forces took the forward settlement, giving us free event immortals that just barely give us the firepower to slowly but surely push the Kree forces back. And after yet another city, courtesy of the gold my towns were producing, we were closing in on mathematics with a third of the age remaining. But with all my influence dumped into the war, I had none for the southern city-state, opening up another flank. This, when combined with the movement of my ballistas slowing to a crawl, meant that I had to fortify the line as they threw themselves onto me in a desperate attempt to fail my game. This reckless charge into my spear wall was neither impeded nor even slowed down by the fact that Napoleon and Harriet joined the war on my side. But despite that, we held on, as I soon realized this wasn't working. I needed to improvise, fast, which is when I had yet another plan, making peace with Jose in return for one of his larger cities. A boon to our legacy goals and an opportunity to reset and regroup, while most importantly weakening our foe. And in the next 10 turns, with the era coming to an end, the calm before the storm was only broken by achieving the one thing that had evaded me for so long. The cultural golden age from building the Nalanda with a free codex on top. We were ahead of every other leader except for one, who was no doubt pushing the age ahead with his future techs, and with 15% of the age remaining, we had to move now. Dimes were scavenged out of sofas to purchase the academies we so desperately needed, and I would soon taste the fruits of those efforts. But it wasn't enough. I don't have the time to get the codices and level 3 troops for the second offensive, and so sacrifices would need to be made. But there was only one possible path that could potentially lead us out of this conundrum with all legacy paths intact. I needed to finally test all my newfound skills and beat the deity Jose while being woefully underpowered. But with all my alliances, 5 war support, and the element of surprise, I think I can do this. Quickly deploying forces and unloading immortals to flank the city in protection of the ballistas and archers who devastated its many defenses, as the first of 7 had already fallen by the end of the Blitz. Despite that, they were nowhere near finished, as the Mississippians and their elite unique unit responded with something unexpected. An advanced chariot rush causing chaos amongst my legion of immortals, and combined with their flaming arrows' damage over time, the situation was turning dire. But still, Jose knew that his first fort falling meant that defending the city center would be untenable, giving it up without a fight and leaving just 5 well-defended districts to go. My forces proceeded to spread out and envelop the city in an act that reeked of desperation, as we had little time remaining. Jose, for his part, was left scrambling from the attack on every front, as he didn't know where the Persian forces would go next, allowing us to take the next 2 districts. 3 left, but those 3 created a defensive wall, and all they had to do was hold out until the next stage, made easier with the fact this kill zone meant that whoever went in was not coming out the same way. It was turning bloody, as now we were the ones getting outflanked, and siege units were placed under risk with 11% of the age remaining, leaving us no choice but to risk an all-out attack that barely succeeded, weakening our forces with just 2 districts to take. But our ballistas were struggling to get into position, forcing us to regroup our meager forces and brute force the second to last district, casualties be damned. 1 district left. but they knew the city would fall if they didn't respond, and sent what remained of their reserves. I had just this turn, or else we would undoubtedly get Vienna'd, which is when I got to thinking. With their capital struggling, I was sure I could take another city off the peace deal, just one, and I'd be able to sweep the Golden Age from the era that has caused the most headache in this gauntlet of a challenge. But what victory would that be? How could I call myself the best when I resort to moves like that? We get this here right now, or we lose this challenge. And so with one turn left, Mississippi's jaws enclosing on our forces, we launch everything we have at the lone archer standing in the way of victory. And after the second assault, we got it! For the first time in this challenge, we get all 4 age objectives on deity. But this wasn't over yet. We still had 2 ages remaining, and as we all know, getting overconfident has caused me to lose the Age of Exploration numerous times. This needed to be perfect. But we weren't alone. Frederick, with his yields, had somehow kept up and is right on our tail as he's running away with the game. And so I go Alter Set and Corona Civica for the next age in support of the civilization that needs no introduction. After making the play to change our capital into a navigable river, keeping the cities we obtained with our economic golden age, it's time to execute the plan. Piety is quickly researched to obtain the quick relics I need to guarantee the culture path, while cartography is completed at the same time my settler span starts, as we require 6 cities in the New World for this to work. But unlike all our last games, the civilization on the new continent was all alone, and Machiavelli had all the yields to match me and Frederick. This is going to be difficult, but with the free relic we got from an event, I knew this game was destined. I spent the next 30 turns colonizing the New World, capturing city-states, and spreading our religion to foreign settlements in an almost flawless early exploration age. But our plans hit a snag when Frederick called us into the war with Harriet and Napoleon. The issue isn't like the Jose game, as Napoleon was getting dumpstered by Frederick. A little too hard. We need to win a score victory for this challenge to count, and with the powerful Frederick growing stronger and stronger, how can I hope to stop him? He's almost as difficult as defeating this Tubman cog with its huge navigable river bonus. Yes, my favorite navigable river, the Atlantic Ocean! But this is all fine, as I'd planned for a civilization to run away with this game, and my plan to counter that runaway is the Abbasid civic path. And while our yields were swelling, Napoleon sued for peace, leaving him to get belt to ass from the Rizzler, who lost his one and only capital. The famed military genius who attacked Russia during the winter does it again. But while I laugh at his misery, I realize the city-states have raised Rome's New World City. I couldn't buy a settler fast enough, quickly guaranteeing at least 3 treasure fleets per round, which is the same amount of relics I need after being the one to secure the southern city-state this age. I wonder what wonder gives 3 relics. While that's marinating, our enormous science numbers are working towards urbanization for the 40 yield tiles. Our 6th foreign city has just broken the monopoly on Machiavelli's home continent. The House of Wisdom has secured the culture golden age, and all we had to do was wait to the very last turn to convert all our foreign cities to our religion. This age was officially won, and with so much time until the next one, we work towards RPG points from future tech, saving our money and influence for the final and most important era that is coming soon. And so with 900 science and 600 culture, we enter the modern age cruising with the best possible setup we can imagine. And so it all comes down to this. We need to continue stepping on this game's throat, and thus continue the cultural scientific game of the Abbasids with the Russians. And after spending all 12 of our legacy points and all the attribute points they provide, we have over 400 science and culture before the very first turn, blowing everyone out of the water, allowing us to beeline natural history and academies to further widen our lead, which we'll need as our dominant position has invited the wariness of every nation on this planet. Good, because I have a plan. Natural history unlocks before anyone else as I buy every explorer I can. This path is the only one that has a limit, especially on deity, as only so many relics spawn on a given map. And so the next goal is to unlock hegemony before anything else. But even still, with just natural history, we get insanely lucky as 3 artifacts are found on our shared island, with the only competition being the corpse of Harriet Tubman. Industrialization comes next for the rail stations in all our major cities, who've just built built military academies for production and schoolhouses for science. Science further boosted by Oxford providing 2 free technologies to further widen this lead, as I was now the runaway Civ. The only thing that could have made this early game better was if I knew what Frederick's agenda was. Thanks, Firaxis. Even still, through this pure skill and planning, we were running away with it, researching mass production for factories and being 1 tech away from flight. And the rich are only getting richer, with 10 relics before even hegemony. You'd think I'd slow down with the excavations, but I did quite the opposite. We need to ensure that no other Civ can get a culture victory, locking them out of a potential game-ending victory condition. I'm reminded that I can't sadly do the same with economic when Baghdad finishes its first factory to get the train rolling with nothing but the finest cotton, putting us well on pace for 500 points before the era ends. Now all we need is to focus on our science numbers and create the most powerful military known to man. Which got me to thinking, if this game is about building something I believe in, like Firaxis is plastered throughout their marketing, what if I need fascism to win a domination victory? Am I Hitler? Do I have to start rounding up minorities, or can I just shave my head? By the time I finished writing this letter, I was already at the end of the tech tree when 30% of the age had progressed and Machiavelli declared his war. But I was expecting this. With my +6 combat strength, no decolonization will be occurring under my watch. While neither he nor Harriet have an ideology, I do. And so all I need is 10 cities captured and we can win the hardest of the 4 legacy paths. So confident in my victory that Baghdad doesn't go on a war footing and instead focuses on the first science project. And my confidence was not misplaced, with Athens and Megara taking huge damage from planes and Katsuya rockets. The naval difference was so stark, I could just focus on shore bombardment while France's navy suicide itself onto our iron hulls. Eventually, thanks to our combined arms offensive, we take all the cities we need aside from 1. And so the race to Baltimore begins. But for once, something goes awry, and Napoleon takes my victory condition. I get down on my knees, look him in the eyes, and think to myself how sad he really is. While it may have been poetic if he was the one to run away with this game, this makes a lot more sense. I take 2 cities off Machiavelli which count as conquered, and so give me my first modern era golden age. But what of the others? All I need for culture is the museums to house my relics. The train of economic victory is chugging full steam ahead, and the scientific path has joined the militarist one as the second of 4 golden ages. All of this at just 56% of the age left me confident enough to fill out my relics for 3 out of 4. And right as the Manhattan Project completes, I begin spamming future civics and techs to not only push the age ahead, but to get 5% more science and culture, pushing my numbers to absurd heights. And as those numbers cross 2,000, we finally do it, securing all 12 Golden Age legacy paths for the first time in recorded Civ 7 history on deity difficulty. But we weren't done yet, as the age is still at 69. It was destined. Maybe not, as Frederick is getting close. I needed future techs, but they kept getting more and more expensive, so even at these absurd yields, it was taking too long. And eventually, on turn 117, when the future Civic was done for the second time, Frederick could now win the game. This was bad, as we had at best 15 turns until he would. The age was at 92%, and there was less than 14 turns as the clock is ticking every turn, achieving closer and closer to ultimate defeat. This was it. 95% and future tech coming in next turn. We have to get 100% right now, or else this might be over. And as I click next turn, we get it. All I had to do was survive this very last turn, so I clicked next turn for the final time, and we did it, clutching the score victory on deity with every objective under our belt. I am the greatest Civilization 7 player in the known world, and so despite my incredible disadvantage, I didn't give up. I didn't accept the fact that I would fall too far behind everyone else, and used my particular set of skills to outperform everybody, mastering the game and coming away with the most emphatic, the most overwhelming, the most dominant deity win as the quote-unquote bad leader Xerxes. And you know what? Maybe when this video releases, someone would have already done this, or done something even more praiseworthy, taking the mantle of king from me in the process. But as of February 11th, 2025, on the day Civilization 7 was released to the general public, I was, for at least a moment, the king of kings.